the greater will, a cosmic force that one day decided to come and play God in the lands between, unleashing, well, a little bit of everything. Hello fellow Tarnished, this is the story of how a god's child named Metyr ended up being the cause of the destruction of her parents' dream. So, how does Metyr ties in with the ancient dragons, our favorite wildcard Marika, and the creation of life in the lands between? Well, get ready as we uncover betrayal, cosmic mismanagement, gods on the run, and how everything that Marika fought for was ultimately invalidated by, you guessed it, us. Today's story is a tangled mess of divine ambition, fear, and rebellion. So if you thought the demigods were bad, wait until you meet their celestial supervisors. Let's break it down. Our story today begins with the Greater Will, this mysterious force of the cosmos, which is not just your ordinary hands-on involved deity. No, think of it less like a guiding figure and more like a distant overseer. It inhabits a lightless void, outside of the world, only sending envious and vassals to enact its will when necessary. So, long ago, the Greater Will fractured the One Great, the original unified form of life, giving rise to births, souls, and, as some would argue, chaos. While this act created life, it also led to all the less nice stuff we are all more or less familiar with, such as torment and despair. So one day, to make sure everything was going according to plan with this new pet project, the Greater Will sent down its daughter as a project manager. Enter Metyr, the gleaming daughter of the Greater Will, whatever that actually means. But more than just a messenger, Metyr was sent to the lands between to manage things, becoming the Greater Will's direct hand. Her task? To oversee the world and keep Daddy's cosmic plan in check. This was the period when creatures were formed, and probably the crucible, the origin of all life, began to fade, giving way to new forms of life, but something was still missing. For a while, it looked like everything was going according to plan, but as we know in the lands between, stability is a fleeting dream. Soon enough, fractures appeared, both literal and metaphorical. Births and souls spread across the world, but so did sin, suffering, and chaos. The Greater Will's creation wasn't as perfect as he'd had hoped. And so, with things spiraling out of control and little Metyr clearly not being able to properly manage things, despite constantly being on the phone with her over-controlling father, the Greater Will decided to patch up the problem by sending her a pet. But this wasn't just any pet, no, this one carried a secret. What the Greater Will really sent down to Metyr was a vassal, an Elden Beast, a creature capable of becoming the Elden Ring, which apparently could also fix the growing imbalance created in the world. A divine act of cosmic delegation. What could possibly go wrong, leaving Metyr to hold the fort? Well, as it turns out, everything. With the Elden Beast now in the lands between with Metyr, its mission was clear. Fix the chaos, restore balance, and let order reign. The Elden Ring was meant to become the world's guiding principle, a self-sustaining system of laws that were supposed to bring stability to the lands between. The Greater Will could now sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight, knowing that the Elden Beast and Metyr had things covered, or so it thought. But here's where things start to really get interesting. The Elden Ring didn't just work out the box. No, it needed a vessel to truly impose order in the world. Now, this is where Metyr gets her promotion. She's not just some divine middle manager anymore. She's now chosen to become the vessel of the Elden Ring. That means she needs to ascend to godhood, a huge promotion, right? Well, wrong, because being a god in the lands between isn't all sunshine and glory. It's a lot more, here's the cosmic balance sheet, good luck keeping things in order. Metyr's ascension was a direct result of the Greater Will's decision to leave things in her hands. But there's a crucial thing we need to understand about being a god in the lands between. The Elden Beast, although it came without warranty, it did come with clear instructions. A god can't do it alone. They need a lord, someone to serve as the anchor, the mortal connection to the divine. This is where Placidusax comes in, the Elden Lord chosen to usher Metyr's godhood. Now, before we proceed, you're probably wondering why I'm so sure that Metyr was Placidusax's god who fled. Well, put it this way, we know that Placidusax was an Elden Lord, meaning that its god must have had the Elden Ring. Now, Marika has the Elden Ring, so that means that she must have taken this Elden Ring from someone else, and when she did so, it means also that the dragon's god was found, as it was the one that had the Elden Ring before Marika. So Marika at some point must have been in contact with Placidusax's god, and who fits the brief better than Metyr to be someone directed to the greater will who also received the Elden Ring. But yeah, moving on. Placidusax was a dragon, and like all dragons, he was powerful, ancient, and loyal. His role was to support Metyr, helping her rule, ascend, and maintain order. At this point, everything should have worked out. The Greater Will had its god, its lord, and the Elden Ring was supposed to keep everything running smoothly. But as we all know by now, nothing in the lands between ever stays stable for long. And so here's where things start to unravel for Metyr. While the Elden Ring brought order, it also brought something else with it, free will. If you think about it, it kind of fits perfectly. Once the lands between were freed from the greater will, they now had free will. It's literally spelled out for us, and honestly, it fits the story too perfectly, in my opinion. Anyway, now we have free will in the lands between. But this wasn't some enlightened, noble version of free will. No, it was more like, here's a bunch of rules to follow, and now you can do whatever you want with your newfound freedom. And for characters like, say, Bayle, this new order was a little too restrictive. But with free will came the ability to rebel, and Bayle was the first to rise up. And Metyr, well, things go ugly for Metyr. Metyr, who had always been in constant communication with her father, the Greater Will, suddenly found herself cut off. Free will meant that even she had to follow the rules of the Elden Ring, but without the direct guidance she had always relied on from the Greater Will. Let's face it, Metyr wasn't ready for this. Without divine guidance, she felt abandoned. She didn't fully understand the new reality, and that's when everything started to spiraling out of control. The world was slipping further into chaos, and Metyr was losing her grip on the very order she was supposed to maintain. I honestly don't think Metyr ever realized that the arrival of the Elden Beast meant she was being cut off from her father's protection. She was on her own now, like grown up, suddenly having to pay her own bills. Only Dad didn't put it that way. He just dropped the family pet on her and called it a day. And so, while Metyr was struggling to keep things together, the cracks in the systems were widening. And then came Bayle. Someone who wasn't just interested in bending the rules. No, Bayle wanted to tear the whole system down. You know, as rebels do. I mean, it's one thing to break the rule, it's another to look at the order and go, yeah, that's not working for me, time to burn it all down. Sound familiar? This led to an all-out power struggle between Bayle and Placidusax. Now, Placidusax, the Elden Lord, still loyal to Metyr, wasn't going to just sit back and let Bayle walk over the world that he and Metyr had tried to hold together. These two clashed, and it wasn't just a minor squabble. The fight between them was intense, and for a while it looked like neither was going to come out on top. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Ever noticed how Metyr's tail and Placidusax's two heads are positioned almost identically? Coincidence? I don't think so. This visual connection makes it pretty clear that there's a deep link between the two. Placidusax wasn't just loyal, he was literally connected to Metyr in some way, maybe even waiting for her guidance or at the very least trying to keep her legacy intact. But things weren't that simple. Bayle, ever the opportunist, saw an opening to not just rebel but to claim dominance for himself. The dragons, Placidusax broods, some even betrayed him to side with Bayle, the very tyrant they were supposed to resist. That didn't sit well with Placidusax, and it led to a civil war within the ranks of the dragons. But as intense as the battle was, what was more shocking was what happened to Metyr herself. The lore tells us that Metyr was fled, and when a god flees, something must have gone terribly wrong. Imagine that for a second. Metyr, the god chosen to uphold order, ran away. Overwhelmed by fear and perhaps a bit of an identity crisis, she abandoned her role as god and left the lands between in complete chaos, taking the Elden Ring with her. But the question is why? Here's my theory. She was caught in a situation she didn't fully understand. She had no backup from the greater will, and suddenly her carefully controlled world was falling apart. Free will, rebellion, betrayals, it was too much. And let's face it, getting caught in a power struggle between Bayle and Placidusax didn't help. So she fled, leaving poor Placidusax waiting for a god who never returned. And here's the kicker. Bayle's rebellion didn't stop with the dragons. It took root, it spread, and the lands between became a battlefield of free will and chaos. But at the heart of it all, Placidusax stood alone, still loyal, still waiting, hoping for the return of his god, Metyr, who had long since disappeared. With Metyr gone and no god left to maintain order, the lands between became a cosmic playground for all sorts of opportunists. Not just the Hornsent faction, but a multitude of gods, some who had been waiting in the wings and others who arrived later, they all seized the moment. Some sent their vassal to stake a claim, while others took up residence in the lands between, each vying for power and influence in the vacuum left behind by the greater will and its fleeing placeholder god, Metyr. Among those new powers were gods who had perhaps long been kept at bay by the greater will authority. They had their own design for the lands between, waiting for a moment of weakness to push their agendas. And once Metyr fled, that moment arrived. This was no longer just about one god and one order. This was a full-on cosmic free-for-all. This could also explain why the Godskin apostles exist later on, to serve Marika. Yes, Marika, watch my other video for more details on this. To serve Marika and help her to get rid of the other gods before her ascension. She could now wield Destined Death to get rid of the competition before removing it from the Elden Ring and stopping being the Glowmite Queen. Again, more on that video. Anyway, back to the story. Let's get back to the various factions now fighting for control on the lands between. The Hornsent faction was one of the most ambitious. They needed a god of their own, or at least their version of it. With the greater will gone and Metyr in hiding, they saw their chance. They likely aimed not just to take control, but possibly to destroy the Elden Ring itself, and so clearing the way for their own deity to rise to power. And that's where Marika comes in. One day, the Hornsent, after much questionable experimentation, finally produced Marika, and they saw her as the perfect candidate to shape into their god, finally a candidate who could help them establish a new order. But this wasn't just about controlling the lands between. It was about reshaping the very fabric of existence to serve the Hornsent will, and Marika was their chosen vessel. But Metyr wasn't quite ready to disappear from the story just yet. If we imagine that the Hornsent sent Marika after the Elden Ring to either destroy or seize it for themselves, then maybe in a desperate move, Metyr reached out to Marika with an accord. What exactly happened during this accord? Well, I don't know that, but it seems to me that Metyr offered Marika the power of the Elden Ring. Why? Well, there are a few possibilities. Maybe Metyr thought that by relinquishing the Elden Ring, she could free herself from the burden of order and escape the factions that were hunting her, like the Hornsent and also the dragons. After all, they had every reason to target Metyr, seeing her as the obstacle standing between them and total control. Or maybe Metyr believed that giving up the Elden Ring would allow her to reconnect with the greater will. Without the weight of the ring, perhaps she thought she could finally reestablish the divine connection she had lost. Metyr called home. Or, let's be honest here, maybe Metyr was just done. After being abandoned by the greater will, thrown into the chaos of free will and facing betrayal, rebellion, and constant danger, maybe she just wanted out. She may have seen the Elden Ring as the source of her suffering and believed that by giving it to Marika, she could have escaped the chaos that had swallowed her whole life. In any case, Marika took the deal. But as we come to know Marika, she wasn't one to follow anyone's script for long. And this brings us to what might be the real twist here. Marika wasn't just interested in holding power, she likely had her own agenda all along. The clues are there in the story. We've been told of a seduction, a betrayal, and an affair from which gold arose. The betrayal is potentially easy to figure out. The Hornsent made Marika to be their god or vessel or whatever, but she turned on them. I'd go as far as to speculate that, long story short, they sent her to either retrieve or destroy the Elden Ring, but instead she kept it for herself. As for the seduction, I think this came from Metyr. Metyr might have seduced Marika with the promise of power, the power of the Elden Ring. Maybe Metyr revealed the truth of her own creation and told Marika everything about what the Hornsent were doing to the shamans, turning Marika against the very people who created her. This could also have been the real betrayal, Marika realizing that the ones she trusted had used her. And finally, the affair from which gold arose. This is complicated in my opinion. It wasn't a romantic affair, but a business deal that didn't involve Metyr in my opinion. The gold we see in the trailer clearly isn't being taken from Metyr, and I don't think these gold strands are the Elden Ring either. Rather, they were added to it, pointing to Marika's own creation of the Golden Order. We know that the Elden Beast was the living incarnation of Order, but not necessarily the Golden Order. The trailers speak of an affair from which gold arose, and I believe Marika took the gold from somewhere else and incorporated it into her own version of Order, creating the Golden Order we know. This gold may have come from a deeper, possibly ancient source tied to Marika's origin, and I suspect it might be connected to her past as a shaman. If you look closely, to me the shape in the trailer resembles a serpent. Other people have pointed this out, and I would have never realized it myself, but now I cannot unsee it. It is a serpent. Yes, it looks like cloth too, but in the shape of a serpent. And I believe this points to Marika's direct connection to the serpent, something I'll explore in detail in a future video, as quite frankly this is driving me mad. So while Metyr played a role in the events that unfolded, Marika's creation of the Golden Order came from a completely different affair, one likely rooted in her own ambition and knowledge. And as for Metyr, well, when we find her, her belly is cut open. Could that have been where the Elden Ring was once held? I think so. But whatever the case, it seems clear that Metyr's promise to restoring the connection to the greater will never came to pass, leaving Marika to discover the truth much later on her own. Which brings us to Marika's own words, as spoken through Melina in her echo. I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order, blah blah blah. Those blissful early days of blind beliefs are long past. Yeah, at some point Marika started to question everything. Maybe this is when she finally realized that the Elden Ring wasn't the blessing she thought it was. It wasn't a tool of divine order, it was a burden. And so, feeling betrayed by everyone, and following some more drama, which I have already talked about in another video, Marika shattered the Elden Ring. And now, after everything Marika went through, after all her efforts to break free from the Order, what happens next? Well, we show up, the Tarnished. We arrive to the lands between, understand nothing, absolutely nothing of millennia of history, and what do we do following Marika's efforts, tragic story, and suffering? We mend the Elden Ring. That's right, after everything Marika fought to destroy, we come along and patch it right back up, reinforcing the very order she tried to escape. Seriously? Are you kidding me? The end? That's it? After millennia of rebellion, we just put it all back together and call it a day? Yes, this really is the sad end of the story of poor Marika. Betrayed, stuck with the Elden Ring, trying to break the system, and here we come, clueless, just mending it all over again. And as for Metyr, poor Metyr finally thought she was free of the Elden Ring, but of course we show up and kill her without thinking twice, because that's just what we do, right? Finally free of the burden, and then, oh wait, here comes the Tarnished. I mean, you gotta laugh. And the greater will? Well, maybe that's why it bailed in the first place. Watching its kid Metyr struggling to manage the lands between was probably enough to make even the greater will say, I'm done, let them figure it out for themselves. Metyr moving out of the house to the lands between didn't quite go as planned, huh? Maybe Dad was right all along to jump ship early on. Thanks for watching.